Our nation has suffered a disaster of epic proportions with the BP oil leak in the Gulf. My thoughts and prayers are with all the citizens, all the communities who have suffered so terribly in the Gulf area of our country. With the recent failure of the top kill strategy, there's apparently no end in sight to the amount of oil that is spilling into the Gulf. The scientific evidence of the migration of the oil, it is ashore now. The results of this are truly devastating. The spill is poisoning our waters, it's suffocating plant and wildlife, it's jeopardizing the health of our citizens, and has dealt an unimaginable blow to fragile economies who were just recovering from previous hurricanes in the Gulf. Jobs, businesses, communities all along the Gulf coast are threatened. We've had 43 days of environmental disaster because we allowed big oil to get away with poor oversight and loose regulations. This disaster is clearly a warning sign. When we put the special interests and profits of big oil first, we put the safety of our workers, our communities, and our economy at risk. Now, my Republican opponents here in New Hampshire seem to be ignoring the clear red flags. We haven't heard a single word from any of the Republican candidates for the United States Senate other than keep on drilling. Not one word about tougher regulations, not one word about protecting our natural environment, not one word on whether they think the big oil companies should pay to clean up the mess. Kelly Ayotte and my other opponents have spent this campaign defending the interests and the profits of big oil, whether it's reckless policies, weak regulations, or billion-dollar subsidies. I believe we need to hold BP accountable for every last cent of the cleanup, as well as the resulting economic damage. They need to take responsibility, they need to take control, and they need to fix what they broke. I supported a proposal to increase the liability limit for economic damages to $10 billion from the current $75 million that's the current law. In the Senate, a single Republican Senator James Imhoff, has put a hold on that proposal in the Senate, so it's going nowhere. Do Kelly and the Republicans think we should let BP oil off the hook again? Is she going to call, or my other Republican opponents going to call for BP to pay up? Or do they want to let taxpayers foot the bill? Bill Binney complained that we were vilifying Wall Street. Is he going to complain that we're vilifying oil companies, just the way he said we vilified the big banks? Will my Republican opponents call on their colleagues in the Senate to release a hold on a bill that would provide real economic liability for BP, or do they want to let BP and special interests rule the day again? I support the President's moratorium on offshore drilling. There should be no new permits for drilling until we figure out exactly what went wrong and how we can make sure it never, ever happens again. Our Republican opponents, well, their chant is drill, baby, drill. Even in the days directly following this disaster, they continued to push the very same reckless policies that caused it. They want us to keep on drilling as the oil is still spilling, and continue to put jobs, land, and lives at risk so big oil can keep their precious profits? Or will they stand up, support the President's moratorium, and put our environment, our economy, and our clean energy efforts first? I will promise you today that as your United States Senator, I will never, ever vote to lift the ban on drilling off of New Hampshire's coast. Our fisheries are too vital, our tourism too essential, and our natural resources too valuable to ever put them in the hands of big oil. So that's the last question I'll ask my Republican opponents. So far, they've stopped at nothing when it comes to drilling. Will they make the same promise I've made to the people of New Hampshire? Or will they continue to choose special interests instead of the interests of the people in New Hampshire? As your U.S. Senator, I'll always tell you where I stand. It's time for my opponents to do the same. Thank you very much.
Congressman, are you The Obama administration has been criticized by its, what some perceive as a slow response to the leak itself. What are your thoughts on that?
The Obama administration didn't cause this leak. BP Oil and the others involved caused this leak for apparently lax safety standards. Now, what the president has done is very commendable. He didn't cause it, but he said he takes responsibility. What the president has said is the buck stops with him, and he's made a series of proposals and acted very aggressively. Today, he's called for tripling resources onshore to provide small business loans to economies and small businesses that have been hurt, to add resources to help with economic recovery. And as I've said, what we really need is a proposal to hold BP liable for every last cent of the damage they caused. And I know that the administration supports that. So he's taking responsibility. When was the last time that you heard a president of the United States stand up and say, I didn't break it, but I've got to fix it, and the buck stops with me? I think that's commendable. I think his response has been commendable.
He's also been criticized for rejecting the offer of help from the UAE last week, saying that it amounts to too many cooks in the kitchen, but people along the Gulf Coast, obviously, liability is one thing, but they want to stop the leak. Why not get every oil expert and anybody who might be able to add to this, come in there and try to stop it?
Look, I think one of the problems that there's been, apparently, is that there wasn't a clear enough focus on chain of command and how things were going on that. And so there's been some adjustments made by the federal government. I'm sure the president will do everything he can and commit the resources that he can to make sure there's a clear chain of command and use whatever resources are appropriate to do whatever we can to stop it and then fix what's broken. I'm not opposed to cooperation if it can be done in the right way.
Congressman, regarding your call to hold BP liable for all damages, and your bill expanding the cap to $10 billion, how do we do this in retrospect, and how do we go back in time and hold them liable for something that's already happened before the launch?
Well, I think that there is precedent for legislation to be made retroactive. This legislation that I co-sponsored makes things retroactive. I think that's reasonable in light of these circumstances, and I think it's important. Clearly, the $75 million cap was way too small for way too long, and I think it's appropriate for it to be retroactive in this case. There's precedent to it.
Last week in the Senate, the woman you want to join there was very critical of the administration's bureaucracy, that far too closely with the administration called for the dismantling of the minimum management service, reports of sports tickets, of dinners with oil executives. Do you share that view, and does there need to be a different regulatory structure, a more beefed up regulatory structure to manage this industry in the future?
Clearly, the mineral management service history is outrageous and bad. And what happened during the tenure of Bush and the Republicans was that the Minerals Management Service, there was despicable conduct, which we all now know about. As you know, Interior Secretary Salazar is completely reorganizing that department. The current head has recently resigned. She was only on the job for 10 months. She recently resigned while she was trying to fix things, but clearly there's a lot more that needs to be done. But the lax oversight that you've got to look at is what happened in the years 2000 to 2009. And what we've seen time and time again is agencies who were not keeping their eye on the ball. It's clear that it happened to the Minerals Management Service with respect to this oil spill. They gave safety exemptions to big oil time and time again. Waivers and safety inspections, waivers on safety inspections, no safety inspections, result a disaster of epic proportions. It happened in financial regulatory with Wall Street. Lax oversight, not looking. Safety exemptions, safety waivers for Wall Street. What did we get? A collapse in our economy of epic proportions. It happened with coal mining. Lax safety and oversight during the Bush Republican years, and what do we get? A mining disaster of epic proportions. You can go down agency by agency to see the damage that's been done. There's a big job that needs to be fixed. But now we've got to have real oversight. We need real oversight and regulators who are on the job working to keep the American people safe.
Does this mean we need some sort of new agency, or do we just need to beef up what's already there?
Well, I know there have been calls for a new agency. However it works, you know, I'm not in favor of simply creating bureaucracy for the sake of creating bureaucracy. Whether a complete reorganization does it, or it does need to be done away with and we need a new agency, what's critical is the function. We need the oversight, we need the regulations that work, we need the regulators who are on the job, we need regulators who are independent of the interests they're regulating. The cozy relationships have got to stop. We've got to stop those conflicts of interest, and we need to protect the people of this country. However we get that done, that's the important thing.
What's the federal government's role in trying to stop this spill? I mean, obviously, BP's attempts continue to fail, and there's been talk about how much the government can actually do in terms of great power.
Look, this is BP's spill. This is BP's rig, it's BP's well, it's BP's spill. It is their job to stop it, and it is the responsibility of the government to basically keep the pressure on continuously, keep the oversight on, and make sure that they are doing everything that can be done to stop it. The federal government has responsibilities in plenty of other areas. We're going to have to, you know, there's dealing with the disaster on shore and committing resources in other ways to help. But it's up to BP and the oil people to stop this spill. Yes, sir.
Congressman, I'm wondering, when we have a country's resource, which oil belongs to the people of the United States the same way the aquifers belong to the people of New Hampshire, why is it that we allow a company to come in and have proprietary information on that resource that we get? We, meaning the government or the people?
You know, we're a country of private enterprise. We have made this alliance with interests who are digging up and processing and shipping and providing us with the energy we need. It happens with oil. It's happened with all our energy. What is really important now is to make sure that with this disaster, we change our energy policies. It is time to begin the move in an aggressive way from a fossil fuel economy to energy efficiency and a renewable economy. I believe we should be #1 in the world in energy efficiency and renewables so that we can reduce our dependence not just on foreign oil, but on oil because we need to do it and we need to start now. That should be the call from this disaster.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.